What's on, ladies and gentlemen? My name's Ross, I like games, and today I want to show you a Keyforge deck. You see, yesterday was Christmas. Merry Christmas to all you lovely ladies and gentlemen. Hope you had a lovely time. Hope you're all looking forward to New Year's, which isn't far away. I hope you all have a lovely time. And more importantly, I hope you all stay rather safe. Very safe. Incredibly safe. But you see, my brother-in-law is quite a lovely man. What he did for New Year's, Christmas. For Christmas, my brother-in-law went and bought me a Keyforge Worlds Collide premium box. And in that, I got 2 decks, and one of those decks was incredibly tasty. And it actually gave me my very first ever legacy card, and a very, very good legacy card for the deck in question. And I'd like to show you that deck. So let's have a look, shall we? It is a Worlds Collide deck, as previously mentioned. It is LAZA, the Bountiful Vault Bard. And given that bards are storytellers, and I'm somewhat of a storyteller myself, that seems appropriate. And it is a Logo Shadow Star Alliance deck. And it is one of my very favourite decks. Now, for what it's worth, it is rated at a 72 SAS on dexofkeyforge.com, putting it in the top 5% of registered decks, but we all know that numbers do not tell the full story. So let's dig in, shall we? And it really is the logo suite that just makes me roll over with joy here. I mean, firstly, it's an Edie deck. EDAI Edie 4x4. When you play it, you archive a card, and your opponent's keys then cost +1 amber for each card in your archive. But you see, I've told you about Edie before, and I told you that if you're going to have a good Edie deck, then what you need to have is a way to protect Edie and a way to archive cards. And we have both. You see, now of course Edie itself, when you play it down, you get to archive a card. But one of the other really cool things in the deck is it is a Velum Hyde deck. Velum, when you reap, you archive a card. If you control Hyde, you archive 2 cards instead. And either of them, when destroyed, you archive the pair of them. Well, that's not true. If one's in your discard pile, you archive the pair. If they're not, then boo hiss, etc. Hey-ho. But there's archiving in Velum and Hyde quite nicely. But I told you there is a legacy card in this deck, and there totally is. It is Novu Archaeologist, which has an action that archives a card from your discard pile. And I'm sorry, right? But if we're looking at a deck that really wants to archive, and you're going to give me a legacy card which helps me to archive, that is a little bit silly, over the top good. Now, there is one other option here for archiving. It is Wormhole Technician. When you reap, you reveal the top card of your deck. If it's a Logos card, play it. Otherwise, you archive it. This is ridiculous. This gives you extra speed and efficiency. This makes my deck run a little bit faster. Now, as a side note, and we'll see a bit more as we go through, but this is a great deck for speed and efficiency and playing faster. There is a Daughter in there, which lets you draw an extra card at the end of your turn. There is Dr. Millie, while we're still talking about archiving. For each creature your opponent controls in excess of you, you archive a card. Now, the thing to remember here is that this deck actually has 23 creatures compared to the average of 17. So Dr. Millie is not going to work all that often. It'll work sometimes, but it won't work all that often, unfortunately. Although if I can get lots of creatures out, I can reap to victory. Now, speaking of drawing extra cards, we got Hapsis here. After an enemy creature is destroyed fighting Hapsis, you ward it and draw a card. That sounds pretty good to me. That sounds like it might work. Sanitation Engineer, when you reap, you discard a random card, a deliberate card from your hand. And this is actually really good. It means you draw an extra card at the end of your turn. It helps you run through your deck just that little bit faster. And then, of course, one of my very favourite things about the entire deck, Double Comm Officer Kirby. One of the best cards in Worlds Collide. When you play or fight or reap, you may play a non-Star Alliance artifact, upgrade, or action, not creature, anything but creature, during this turn. Now, annoyingly, like I say, my card is predominantly creatures. My deck is, 23 creatures, 9 actions, 2 upgrades, 2 artifacts, but still, it's house cheating, and that's awesome. But to go back to my original Edie discussion, I told you we needed archiving, and I've shown you we got a bunch of archiving, but we also need a way to fix it. We need a way to make it so that Edie stays around. We've got some. We've got double Medic Ingram. You see, Medic Ingram, 3 power, 0 armor, but when you play or fight or reap, you may heal 3 damage from a creature and ward it. So if Eddie's not KO'd here, Medic Ingram comes along quite nicely. We've also got Cloaking Dongle, which gives the creature and each of its neighbours elusive, which means that the first time it's attacked, nothing happens, and you don't have to put this onto Edie. You can put a Star Alliance creature next to Edie and then attach this, and he gets elusive right now. Because the problem is, you can play Edie, but you cannot play Medic Ingram on the same turn, and that's a little bit upsetting. And Comm Officer Kirby lets you house cheat, but it lets you play anything but a creature, so you could not play Edie on a Star Alliance turn using Comm Officer Kirby, which is, let's just say, a little bit sad. We've even, if you want to take the mick, got Explo Rover, which could give Eddie Skirmish, so you can actually attack other creatures without taking any damage in return. That's kind of fun, ladies and gentlemen. So we've got some ways to archive, and we've got, now they're not perfect ways to protect. I ain't arguing they're perfect ways to protect, but we got some decent ways to protect Edie here. And that's the real hook of the deck. It's not really just an Edie deck. Eddie's great, but Edie is not the only thing in this deck. What is really good about this deck is 2 things. Number 1, 23 creatures means that I can overwhelm my opponent with a huge amount of creatures. Plus, of course, we've got stuff like Hapsis and Medic Ingram, Cloaking Dongle, etc., which helps to protect my creatures. It's not just getting them out, it's also protecting them. And then we've got lots of ways of drawing cards and archiving, which allows me to run through my deck faster and have a more consistent deck. The other thing I do want to bring attention to quickly, we've got Inky Gloom, which stops your opponent using creatures to reap next turn, and 2 copies of Stealth Mode, which stops your opponent playing action cards next turn, so there are a couple of ways to really control your opponent's options. So to run through the rest of the cards in the deck then, to make sure we don't miss anything. In logos, we've got 2 copies of Twin Bolt Emission, deals 2 damage each to 2 creatures, while giving an amber bonus. That's pretty gosh darn cool. We've got Babbling Bibliophile. When you reap, you draw 2 cards. That's pretty good. Daughter lets you draw a card at the end of your turn, an extra card. Dr. Millie's the archiving we talked about. We've mentioned Edie. Hapsis. After an enemy creature is destroyed fighting Hapsis, you ward it and draw a card. So essentially, you can always just destroy a creature, you take nothing back for ward, draw a card, reward, so on and so forth. We got the Velum Hyde combination we talked about. Now, I talked about Velum with the archiving, but we got Hyde that draws cards as well. When you reap, you draw a card, but if you control Velum, you draw 2 cards instead. Bearing in mind that hopefully when they get destroyed, you should be archiving them, which means you will be able to play them down together, and that's kind of lovely. And your opponent's going to want to take out Velum Hyde, but they're also going to want to take out Daughter, and they're also going to want to take out Babbling Bibliophile, and they're also going to want to take out Edie. They can't take them all, well actually there are plenty of cards that can, but unless they've got one of those cards, they can't take them all out at once. Novo Archaeologist, my first legacy, and also a phenomenal legacy in this deck. Sanitation Engineer is the one that lets you discard, and Wormhole Technician lets you play an extra card or archive a card. We have got some phenomenal speed in this logo suite, really good speed. Moving into Shadows, we want a bunch of Amber Control, and we've got some Amber Control. What I really love here is 2 copies of Ronnie Wristclocks and 1 copy of Bren the Fanatic. Ronnie, when you play it, you steal an amber. If your opponent's got 7 or more, you steal 2 instead. And then Bren the Fanatic, when you play it, your opponent gains an amber, but when it's destroyed, you steal 3 amber. That's quite cool. We've then got Kaimor Eclipse, and I've got to mention Kaimor Eclipse right now, because you shuffle each flank creature into its owner's deck. So what you really want to try doing here is get Ronnie on the flank, and then Kaimor Eclipse. The ideal situation, and bearing in mind there's a bunch of archiving in this deck, so you might be able to set this up with archiving, play Ronnie on one flank, steal amber, play Ronnie on the other flank, steal amber, and then play Kaimor Eclipse to get rid of a couple of your opponent's creatures while putting your Ronnie back in your deck. That sounds like fun. No safety in numbers deals 3 damage to each creature that belongs to a house with 3 or more creatures in play. Might be useful, but bearing in mind the high creature count here, that might be a card I don't play very often, given that I'm probably going to do a lot of damage to my creatures. Trust No One just lets me steal an amber, but if I've got no friendly creatures in play, I steal 1 amber for each house represented amongst my opponent's creatures. Again, it's not always going to be that great, but maybe if my opponent plays a board wipe, this would be a really good answer. And it's still stealing an amber. Stealing an amber is still good. Spike Trap's got an Omni ability whereby you sacrifice it and then deal 3 damage to each flank creature. Get Bren the Fanatic on a flank, then use it. Sounds like fun, right? Subtle Maul is an artifact that makes your opponent discard a random card from their hand. That can be fun. Breaker Hill has elusive and gives each of its neighbours an action that steals an amber. Great combo here with Cloaking Dongle. Basically give a bunch of creatures elusive and an action that steals an amber. And then we've got Whisper. It's got an action whereby you lose an amber, but you get to destroy a creature. Could be one of your opponents, could be Bren. The thing to remember about Bren the Fanatic is you've got to have a way to get rid of it. We've got a couple ways to get rid of it. And one of my very favourite creatures from Worlds Collide, Weesand. It's got Deploy, you can put it anywhere you like on your battle line. It's got Elusive. Now if it ever ends up on a flank, you destroy it. But we got lots of creatures here. After a player forges a key, you gain 2 amber. You forge a key, you gain 2 amber. Your opponent forges a key, you gain 2 amber. Sounds like fun. And honestly, between Ronnie Wristclocks, Bren the Fanatic, Breaker Hill, Trust No One, we've got some options here, ladies and gentlemen. We have got some amber control. Moving into the Star Alliance, we've got the 2 stealth mode I've mentioned. We've got Xeno Training, 1 amber bonus, and then for each house represented among friendly creatures, a friendly creature captures an amber. But you've got a very, very creature-heavy deck here, so you are likely to have all 3 houses represented more often than in a lot of decks. Arms Master Melina has Hazardous Free and gives its neighbours Hazardous Free, so you take 3 damage when you attack them. So you can make your opponent take 3 damage to attack Edie, bearing in mind you can also give him Elusive with Cloaking Dongle. And if you've given him Elusive and Hazardous Free, it's going to be a very difficult one to take down. Not to mention you can ward it using Medic Ingram. And I know a lot of these options aren't in logo, so you've got to play Edie down and then you can do it next turn. But there's still a bunch of options for making Edie an awkward target to take down here. I talk about Edie a lot. I do love me some Edie. 2 Comm Officer Kirby we've mentioned. Explo Rover can give you Skirmish. Lieutenant Kaka has Taunt and Hazardous Free. Oh yeah, so you can put him down next to Edie, and your opponent is not allowed to attack Edie. They've got to take down Kaka. Sounds like fun, right? Cloaking Dongle we've mentioned, and Light of the Archons gives a creature +1 power and +1 armor for each upgrade attached to it. And there's only 2 upgrades in a deck, but don't forget Explo Rover can be attached as an upgrade, so that would then make 3. +3 power, +3 armor. You could make a beastly creature. It doesn't have the Amber Rush of some decks. It's got middling Amber control. Not great, middling Amber control. But it's got some. But what it's really got here is efficiency and creature power. And remember, you might have slightly worse Amber control than other decks, but if you've got a faster, more consistent deck, you're going to draw into those cards more often, which is actually going to make them a better option. And you've got really good creature power. And then, of course, there's stuff like Edie. Eddie's not going to win you every game, let's be clear about that. But Edie is a great option, and I told you that in an Edie deck, you need archiving and ways to protect it, and this has both of them. I don't know if this has immediately gone to be my very favourite deck that I own, but it has instantly gone into the top 3, and I'm going to have to do a little bit more digging to see which are my favourites. But this was an awesome Christmas present. I wanted to share it with you, and I wanted to talk it through, because looking through decks like this is how we get a bit better, frankly. So there we go, ladies and gentlemen. That's what I think, but I would be delighted to know what you think about all of this stuff. So, Let me know in the comment section. Go nuts. Be nice. And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at The Wassy, and Twitch for some live action at twitch.tv/PTCG Radio. And maybe consider checking out patreon.com/PTCG Radio. You can get some bonus pods and you can tell me what videos to make. It is a good time. But by far the most important thing, as always, look after yourselves till next time, would ya? Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching Wassy Plays.